Welcome back again. So we're going to try to start doing a little bit more with this task view controller. Instead of just showing the title, we're going to try to show some tasks. We're not going to go all the way to the end. We're just going to try to hard code some tasks. So just hard code some creates. And then we're going to show them with a very simple built-in table view controller, or sorry, table view cell. Later, we'll make a custom one. So you can see that like where there normally would be like a star over on the left, we're just going to say the word starred, and it's how we're going to get started. So what we want to do is we first want to come up with a way to display the task. The list object that got passed in, it's got a property on it called task. The challenge with that task is that it's actually a set, which means that it's in no particular order. It's a set of pointers to individual tasks. Sets are great. They definitely have their value, but they're kind of terrible for table views, right? Because a table view, you very much need to say, all right, row 6, what's the value for row 6? And if you have a set, I mean, it's kind of a disaster. So what we're going to do is we're going to make an array called task, which is simply the values of the list task as an array, and we're going to sort the order, right? So that's our goal. So let's go write some code. I feel like it takes forever to explain what we're going to do. Maybe I should just stop doing that. So what we want to do is we want to have a property. We're going to make it non-atomic strong. It's going to be an array called task. We also are going to definitely need to import task.h because we're going to need to do all kinds of things with it. And so what we want to do with this is we want to sort that set. And we're going to be sneaky, right? So we could have a function called like load task or something like that. But instead, since it's a property, we're going to do a property override. And that override is whenever somebody tries to get that array, so we'll just kind of start typing it here. You can see that it is built in, so we're overriding something. So whenever somebody tries to get that array, we're going to intervene with a custom getter. The way these custom getters work is you typically look at the real underlying instance variable, which is underscore task of the property name. So if underscore task, which is the actual instance variable, if it's nil, then we're going to have to make it. If it already exists, though, feel free to use it. So the hard part is the making it if it doesn't exist. So what we want to do to make it is we want to take the list, and we want to take his task, which you can see here as a set, and we just want to convert that set into an array. The easiest way to do it is all objects. And so what all objects will do is it will just convert that set into an array, and then once you've got the array, then you can present it, right? But we actually want to do a little bit better than that. What we want to do is we want to sort this thing, right? So we want the starred items first and then the unstarred items. And then within the starreds, we want it in alphabetical order. And within the unstarreds, we want it in alphabetical order. So we're going to call a function. It's called sorted array. So it's going to return a new array using the previous array. Sorted array using comparator is what we're going to use. And then I'm going to hit enter just so it kind of auto-completes some. I should have probably put my square brackets in first. So there's a square bracket that goes there, a square bracket that goes there, and then a semicolon. This function, what this function does is it needs to return a certain value. It turns out the values are -1, 0, and +1. But what they call them in Objective-C is NS order ascending, descending, or same. So you always need to return one of those three things from a function like this, a comparator. Or you can call some other function that will return it for you. So we're going to write this function. I'm going to go ahead and give us a little bit more screen real estate here. All right, that looks better. And then the first thing we want to do is there are two things passed into this, and by default it calls them generic. It doesn't know what they are. We happen to know that they are task items. So we've kind of got task 1, and then we've got task 2. So we know specifically what these things are. And by changing it from ID to task, that actually does essentially a cast. Oops, I left the word ID and typed the word cast. I wanted to put task instead of ID. And now what we want to do is we want to decide how to sort these. Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to check the stars, right? So if task1 dot starred, you'll notice that it's a number and not just a bool. This is a very common issue. Bools are primitives. They can't be stored directly into core data, so you have to wrap them as an NS number. So what we want to do is we want to actually convert it back to a bool. And this will make more sense when we finish. But if task 1 is starred, and then task 2 is not starred, I don't care about alphabetical order at all. I just want to, return something. And then the question is, which one do I return? And I'll tell you what, let me go ahead and type the other case, and then we'll talk about which one we want to return. So we've kind of got three cases. So if the first one is starred and the second one is not, if the first one is not starred, but the second one is, and then we've got the case where they're the same stars. And I'll tell you what, the same stars one is actually the easiest because what we want to do is we just want to sort them by their actual tasks. So we're just going to sort them alphabetically. And the nice thing about that is we can actually just use somebody else's sort method. You'll see that the method we're calling here is compare, and it's going to return a comparison result. There's a couple different flavors. You could do the default, which would give you an ASCII alphabetical, which I think would be fine. Or you can pass in certain options. So I'm going to sort it compared to the other guy's task. And I'm going to see what options we've got here. The one we want is NS case insensitive. I looked this up on Stack Overflow, right? So I didn't come up with that. But the one we want is case insensitive search. That way you get what most people expect, is regular alphabetical order where, lowercase a comes before uppercase z. So I'm just going to go with that. If you want to look more about what ASCII alphabetical is versus regular alphabetical, you can. Now in these other cases, I don't care about alphabetical. I just want to return an NS comparison result. So I'll do NS order ascending on this one. So ascending means like task 1 is A, and then the other one is Z. That's a poor example because they're not A and Z, but that means like they're in ascending order, right? So if he is starred, and he is not starred, then that's good, right? So the starred one would come first. It's like, an A, it's an early, and then a not starred would come late. So that's an ascending order. I always get that backwards, so I have to remember how it works every time. And then no shock, the other one is descending. And then if they're the same stars, then we use alphabetical. So what this does is whenever somebody wants the task, we will give them the task. If it doesn't exist yet, we're going to remake it, and we're going to sort it. So it's really an efficient system for doing things. If you ever want to resort it, the trick is going to be that you're just going to set it to nil, and then it'll resort it the next time somebody wants it. So if you ever want to sort it, I know this sounds crazy, you just set it to nil, and then you reload the table, and then the table in the process of reloading will also resort the list. And it works out really efficiently. It's called lazy loading, and it turns out to be a task or a programming language concept you should use a lot. Great. So we're sorting task. Super. Let's display some task. Number of sections. This is kind of basic 101 table stuff. If you just don't have this method at all, it defaults to one section, exactly what we want. Number of rows. Our number of rows is simply equal to the number of tasks we have in that array. So it's just self.task .count. That one's pretty easy. Next up is cell for row at index path. So we're going to have to start writing a little bit here. We're going to need a reuse identifier for our prototype. I guess we ought to go over to the storyboard and make a cell prototype. So if we come over to the storyboard, we select our cell prototype that's right here. At a bare minimum, it needs an identifier, right? So it needs a reuse identifier. We'll call it a task cell, singular task. For now, we're going to use a subtitle. the goal of this whole like unit is to make custom table view cells, but for getting started with it, we're just going to use a built-in one. So we're just going to say subtitle. That way we can put the task in the title, and then whether it's start or not in the subtitle. It's a good hacky, just getting started system. All right, so task cell, I'm going to go put on my clipboard. I'm going to come back over into here. Obviously, I'm supposed to make a constant out of it because that's the right way to do it. But you know what? I was good last time, so I'll be evil this time. I'll just hard code it. So whenever somebody asks for a cell, give them a task cell. Next step is to configure it. So I'm going to write to do later use a custom cell. But for now, we'll just do a nice simple thing. So we'll say title label, text label is what it was called, dot text. What we want to set that to is we want to set that to whatever the task is for this row. So I suppose I ought to go ahead and get that. I'll just say task for row. And the way we get that is really simple. In this case, it's just an array. And so we're just going to use the index path dot row. Obviously, I could have inlined that, but it's very simple. So it's an array. We grab the index path dot row. We don't care about the section because we're only using one section. And that's going to be the text. So I'm just going to say task for row dot task. And then on showing whether it's start or not, I'm going to also use the task for row. I'm going to take its starred value, which again is an NS number, not just a bool directly. So I have to convert it to a bool. And if it is starred, then I'm going to do one thing, and that thing is that I'm going to set the detailed text label. And I'm just going to set its text just to say the word starred for now. So obviously temporary. If it is not starred, I'm just going to set it to nothing. I'm going to set it to nil, which should make that UI label just disappear. Great. So it's hacky, but supposedly we would now be showing things on the screen, which is good. So we've got the display side down. Unfortunately, we still have a problem, and that's that none exist, right? So we've got to make some. So we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to start off with a little hard code, which will just make our lives a little easier. So what we did before is we just kind of did a little hard code in view will appear. So we're going to do the same thing again this time. Actually, sorry, it's view did appear and not will appear. So last time we made a bunch of list, which was great. This time we're going to make a bunch of task. So instead of list, I'm just going to type task. I'm going to blow away the bottom ones because they're very different. And instead of making a list, I'm going to make a task. It does not like this self.managed object context, so that's kind of a pain. So really what we need to do is we need to figure out some way to get the managed object context. And then we've also got this helper method called SaveContext, and it doesn't exist yet either. So I have to implement both of those things. I'm going to actually do the SaveContext one first, because that's going to teach me how to get the managed object context. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this out because it's got syntax errors. I'm going to go look at my SaveContext from before, and I'm going to use it as a starting point. Great. So save's always the same. You see if it has changes, and then you call save on it, and then we're just crashing if something fails. Should not fail, right? Problem is managed object context. We don't have access to it over here, so we need some way to get access to it. It turns out that the way that I'm going to get it is I'm going to get it from the app delegate. That's where they actually got it in the other place too. So I'm just going to go get it from the app delegate. So there's a couple ways to do that, of course, but the way that's the easiest is just to get it directly. So we're just going to do an import of the app delegate. And so what we're going to do is in here, app delegate, and what the heck, I'll be verbose this time around, is equal to, I need to type UI application, shared application, and then we're going to get his delegate. That essentially gives us access to the single instance of the app delegate, which is great. And then off of him, we're going to get a managed object context which I'll just call context. So we're just going to say app delegate dot managed object context. So there's always a way to get the context, and here we just got it straight from the app delegate. So instead of saying self.managedObjectContext, I'm just going to put the context right in there. If it turned out we needed to use it in a lot of places, I probably should have made a self.managedObjectContext, but since we're only going to need it in here, and then temporarily for testing above, I'll just go ahead and just copy paste that. So if I had made a property called self.managedObjectContext, it would have been easy to get in two places. But since all this code up here I'm just going to be deleting anyway, I'm just going to copy paste those two lines, right? So finally stop complaining about creating the task. Now what it's complaining about is that it doesn't have a title. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a task. So I'll say a fake task I might do. No, I'll start with I must do. In addition to the task, we also need to know what list it's going to be in. So we're going to set the list, and that's really simple. We just set it to the list that was passed in. And then we also want to set its starred value. Now the starred value is actually an NS number, so instead of saying yes, you actually need to say at yes. I don't know if you remember that, but at is the trick that like converts a normal string to an NS string. At with brackets converts an array into an NS array. And this at in front of the S converts it to an NS number. Great, so there's one task. Just to kind of make things a little bit more robust, I'm actually going to put in a little bit of code here that checks to see if the list task count is equal to 0. So if it's currently 0, that's the only time I'm going to add stuff. And so that way, if we kind of come back and forth in this, they won't just get added and added and added and added. Eventually, we're going to delete it anyway. Oh, I forgot to call super. Bad programming practice. All right. Instead of just one, I kind of feel like showing a bunch. What I'd like to do is I'd kind of like to show that my sorting works. So I'm just going to have a task 2 here that I'm going to start with a later letter. So I'll say ZZZ, I must sleep. So it's really important for you to sleep. And then those are the starred versions. Let's go ahead and make a non-starred version as well. And again, I don't care if this code is ugly because I'm eventually going to delete it all anyway, right? So there's 3, 3, 3, and then this one starts 4, so I'll say 4, 4, 4. And instead of yeses all the way down, I'm going to change this one to no, not starred. And then I'm going to change the word must to might sleep because it's not starred, right? So I did that kind of fast, but you know, you can pause it, or I'll try to make this part to where you can just copy it, right? So we've got 2 that are starred, 2 that are not starred, and my goal is to see that all the sorting happens. So I've actually got it in the right order here, which I probably should have made it the wrong order to show that it did sort, but that's our plan. Now the next thing we have to do is we're saving it, right? But if I run this right now, and I click into a row, it'll create it all, but you won't see it. Well, let's just run it. So there's currently a problem that it won't reload the data yet. So when you click into something, so I'm going to click into iOS development, it looks blank. That's because it created them, it saved it, it just didn't update the display, right? But if I hit back, you can see that there are 4 tasks, and now when I come in, all 4 are there. So the last little thing we want to do this time, oh, and they do say starred correctly, and then these do not say the word starred, so that it seems to be working. But what we'd really like to do is we'd like to resort. So one thing we're going to need to do is we're going to say, hey, table view reload data. Now if we only did this, it would actually fail still, because we're mirroring. If you remember that, we're mirroring that set with an array, and the only way that that array gets updated is if you nil it out. So this takes a little while. So what this is going to do is this is going to force a refresh on the array. And that's actually very important, because if you think about what happens, reload table gets called, which means cell for a row at index path will get called. And what it does is it uses that array, and whenever you say self.task, it actually pulls them from here. And if they're nil, it'll refresh them and resort them. So this actually should work just lovely. So now if I click on my list, which currently has none, they should show up right away the first time, which is kind of cool. Awesome. So now we've got some fake tasks in various places. I mean, you can click on your other list and you can make some fake tasks there too. Once you've got a couple fake tasks, I don't want to make fake tasks everywhere. So I will go ahead and comment out this chunk of code now that I've got a couple handy. I won't delete it because who knows, I might need it later. But I don't want to be creating those fake tasks forever. All right, so now that I've got it commented out, if I stop it and run it again, now if I go into, looks like Android Dev doesn't have any task. It still doesn't have any task, so we're not doing the fake task creation. Super, so we did what we wanted to do. I'm going to catch the slides up just kind of really quick. There's creating one task, there's creating a lot of tasks, and we fixed this issue to where they didn't show up at first by clearing out the array and then saying, hey, table view, reload the data. Great, come back next time, and what we're going to do is instead of this like ugly table view cell, we're going to start making a custom table view cell. All right, see you then. Bye.